Welcome to Project Setup and Workflow. We're going to go over some project configuration items. We're going to discuss the project setup. We're going to go over estimates, and we're going to touch on cost codes and cost types. Some of this has already been pre-configured for some of you, but we do want to go over some of those items to recap the configuration. So I'm going to come in here to the projects setup configuration, and notice I'm at top level. And one item I want to point out is the project sequencing, the estimate sequencing, the project contract ID sequencing, and your change management sequencing. So some companies like to have their own project number and not have the system assign a number. Others like to have this sequenced where it's just going to have a set number and it's going to increment by 1, for example. So that's up to you on the sequencing. We do recommend setting up your project ID, setting up your project contract ID and your project estimate ID. If you're not going to auto sequence, we recommend setting those up to be the same number. So for example, if you have 25-200 for a project number, best practice is to put 25-200 for your project contract and for your project estimate IDs. Okay, it helps when you're looking at the lists to be able to see that those estimates and those contracts belong with that specific project. Okay, so it's kind of a best practice approach. I will say most people do like to not have this sequencing turned on. So they do like to have this turned off. Down here, we have change management. So some people like to have the change request and change order sequence on. This is not necessarily the change request or change order number that will be shown on the forms. Okay, so don't get that confused. You can still put an external reference number on the forms that is different than an internal random ID that's assigned, okay? And one other tip on the sequencing, if you have an integration, you might want to consider, or you may need to have these turned off because the project management software might push the job in and have its own job number, okay? So you might have to have these turned off. So to turn them off, you simply delete the field. All right, so down here, project summary. We don't use this tab on the project screen. That's not useful. We don't use that one. We use dashboards instead. So we'll have that blanked out in that area. Your dimensions already look like that. We're going to scroll down here. You should have your display options set like that. And we have the WIP already configured with a best practice approach. Okay, so if you have different account numbers, this is something we'll want to talk about on your check-in, on your one-on-one that we have after the project area, where we'll talk about this WIP setup, okay? But this is the best practice approach. Okay, I'm going to navigate over to the cost types. Now, we would have already discussed this with you when we're bringing your lists in, your data in, your cost types. So I do want to point out, as a reminder, your accumulation types, you do want to stick to these specific accumulators and not change these. You do have capability to change them or add new ones. However, a lot of the reports are built using these accumulators. You can have more cost types, but make sure you're using one of these accumulators when you're setting up a cost type. So I'll edit one and show you. So you want to stick to the ones that are already pre-configured here and not create new ones. That's going to help with your reports. If that's something you need to discuss, let us know, but that is something that you want to stick to. Again, you can have your own cost types, ID and name here, but you do not want to change those accumulators. And navigate over to the standard cost codes. We're going to talk about those for a second. Again, we would have talked to you about this during your data importing. If you have Procore, if you have another system that integrates with Intacct, you might have a specific requirement on how this format is done. So for example, Procore allows dashes and periods, but spaces, like the structure here, is not something that is allowed with Procore, for example. Also, I will say this is a sample company. You do not generally probably want to do spaces. It's just not as fun to type that number in when you're on an input screen. So you might want dashes or periods or something of that effect. That's a little easier to type. Okay. Now you do have a billable checkbox you want to make sure is on here. And you want to make sure you have some cost types assigned to the child level cost codes. So this is a child because it's got a parent here assigned. And you can also see in the tree, the hierarchy tree, the 006200 is underneath the 00 group parent cost code. As a best practice, we do not want to have cost types assigned to the parent cost code. Generally speaking, do not want these on there. Generally speaking, you do not code to a parent cost code. So to help with that potential input error, if someone is inputting an AP bill in Intacct and they don't see cost types, they accidentally pick a parent cost code, that's going to trip them up that they've got the wrong cost code. Okay, so as a good practice, don't put cost types on your parent level cost codes. Okay. And one last thing I'll point out is when you're making new cost codes, look at another one first or duplicate. Just duplicate buttons. You're not going to see this more detailed item here. It's going to say general. You're not going to have this list. Okay. So yours is going to say general in your instance, not have these specific items here listed. It's a little more simple of a setup. So note that that will look different in your setup. Okay, let's navigate over to the setup project status. So there are two statuses on the project screen. There is a status and a project status. The status has a drop down. It's static. It's either active or inactive. This one, which is called project status, is a custom status that you can assign to a project. You can make up whatever you want for the names. You can prevent entries from happening if you're in a pre-closed out state on the job. So if you don't want any more subcontracts or POs or any more labor to hit that job or that project, then you can create a status that prevents labor or subcontracts and POs from occurring. And it's going to error out if you try to code anything to that project. Okay. So those statuses, these project statuses, are pretty powerful with those preventions. So you are wanting to close the job out at the end of June, for example. You want to then warn your staff that codes cost to that job that, hey, it's getting closed out. We don't need any more time to go there. Please code the time somewhere else. So that's kind of the purpose of those. Another purpose of these is to use this in filtering, in dashboards, in reporting, and on your project list. So if you want to see jobs that they've just been bid, they haven't started yet, you can do all sorts of pre-close status. You can do all sorts of different statuses. The project's been bought out, whatever you need to do for tracking, it can be used for multiple different things. You can also do something with the whip tool where you want to show jobs or projects on the whip tool and filter it for a specific status here. You could even make a status that says close out on whip, so you know that month it needs to be closed down. And then you could put all those prevention entries on there so there's no costs that are going to happen while you're closing it out on that whip tool. Okay. So there's all sorts of reasons as you learn the system more. There's all sorts of reasons to use these project statuses. They can be added later. They can be adjusted later. The statuses can be changed on those projects throughout the project lifecycle as well. So I'm going to navigate over now to the project types. And this is going to be used for reporting for, again, filtering on dashboards. And if you want to see profitability in a certain segment, certain types of projects, right? My hotels, I want to see how I'm doing on my hotels. Or maybe I want to track the number of hotels. I'm going to put this project type on the project setup screen, and I'm going to get all that kind of reporting. So it's kind of like your sub-verticals, what you want to report on in your business. Maybe you have service and you have commercial, or you do development too. Maybe you want to get down to this granular level, but you can use the type however you want. It's just a way to, again, group these up as all the hotels, get the profitability on them, use them on dashboards, for example. So I mentioned grouping. So what I'm going to go to here is a project group. And I'm going to explain how these can be used. So if I have a set of projects that I want to see, for example, there's a hotels group here. So if I want to see all of the hotels, I'm going to create a project group, and I'm going to say, if the project type equals hotel, consider it part of this group. Then I can pick this group on a dashboard. I can pick it on a filter on a report as a prompt. I can do all sorts of financial reporting on it. So if I go to the project performance dashboard here and look at the project filter, I can see right here my hotels group, and I hit apply. My financial reports here, which also can be created with other dimensions like projects. So it's strange that these are called financial reports, but that is the term in the system. So I've created a project report. This is a financial report that's drillable, but now I have my hotels only showing. Okay. And I can drill into these costs. I can drill into the billings, and I can see on my hotels some of the detail of what's been going on. Okay. I can also get this high level overview of how much I'm making on my hotels, for example. Okay. On those active jobs that are still going. See, I've got this active projects project group that's filtered on. So there's all sorts of different ways you're going to use things in the system. We're just trying to give you some information so you can do some initial setup on these types of things. So the project groups can be used to group project managers. There's all sorts of different types of filters in these project groups. So down here, if I click on the field, I can create some that are for anything that's been started in 2025, any of my jobs that have ended in 2025. I can do all sorts of things here with all of these fields and my different options for filtering. And I also can do some specific, just add some specific projects instead of using the filter. I can just pick and choose certain ones as well. So there is different ways you can use the grouping mechanism. The most common one is to use this filtering mechanism at the bottom. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to set up a project. A lot of the time you're going to be at the entity level when you set up your projects. Okay, unless you have a specific reason, and there are a few reasons to be at top level, generally you're going to be at the entity level adding your projects. So I'm going to navigate over to the project screen. I can either hit the plus sign or I can click on the word projects. If I click on the word projects, I'm going to see a project list here. Okay. Another tip I'm going to give you is there are custom views in the system. So I have some custom views that I've created already. If you want to start a brand new one, you're going to click create new view. What this does is it lets you rearrange the columns or add more columns into the view here. I can also do a filter as well. Okay, so I'm going to show you the view because you probably will want to do this on your project list. So I probably want my project manager names on there. I might want the type of project potentially. So I've got project type on there, but you can see all the different fields here that I have available. Customer name, let's just add another one here. And then if I go to the column sequence, I can drag and drop my columns in the order that I want them. So I can put my project manager first, my customer next to the project, hit save, edited a current view. And now I have my project manager name, I've got my customer, and I've got some more fields here. So now let's tie this all together and add a project into Intacct. So I'm going to hit the add button here. And we're going to type a project ID. Put a project name here. Project category is going to be contract. If you have an internal non-billable job, that's sometimes used, but most of the time it's going to be contract here. This is not a customizable list, by the way. Okay, so that's a contract usually there. Project type, you can pick in the list. You can add on the fly here as well. Description, if wanted, that's longer than the project name. Again, any of these fields can be used on reports or forms. Customer, got to pick a customer in order for billing to work. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a customer in the system so that the billing works correctly on that screen. Okay, so I'm just going to pick a random customer here. Begin and end dates useful on your estimates, not required. And notice anything that doesn't have a star is technically not required. Okay, but we're going to talk about smart rules at the end where we want some of these fields for sure. Okay, begin and end date are useful, so you could require them if wanted. If it's a child of another project, you can pick the parent project here. Okay, so if it's a sub project. The invoice with parent button you do not want to use. That is an old button that does not work. Okay. This include project and WIP schedules. So this is a read-only field that looks like you can check mark it, but you cannot. We will be talking about WIP in another series of videos. So that will be something that is read-only when you include WIP in the project settings here. Okay. Project status, this is the custom project status that I was talking about that you could use if wanted. Status active, inactive. This is not customizable. This will take it off all screens and all reports. So be careful with this one because when you inactivate it, it will break the WIP schedule if you are trying to close out the job on the WIP and it has some activity. So be careful with that one. The location here, you would pick either your entity or the locations underneath the entity. So notice I'm in Timberline GC. I have Timberline GC entity, but then I also have the locations underneath that entity. Okay, and it's only those locations for that entity. And then department, if using, you could pick your department. Class you generally don't use. These aren't used a lot. This might be used with sales use tax, but again, not used a lot. Project manager, so you probably want to pick somebody there. Scope and schedule is not used here either. You might have a sales contact for who sold this project in your company, potentially, okay? Additional info. So on this tab here, you're going to want to put terms in. You're going to want to put a billing type. Usually it's time and material or fixed fee and expenses. And then you want these two default boxes turned on. The billing type here is more of a tag. It doesn't really do anything as far as how the billing works. That is another area. It's the project contracts area. So it's more just for your list when you're looking at your project list to tell what type of billing it's going to be. But it doesn't do a whole lot. So even if you forget it, not a big deal. But that is there. Project contracts, project invoices tabs you can see here. These will come into play as you get more into the system with you've got a project contract in, you've got some invoices against the contract. You're going to see more tabs in the system too for commitments, change orders, some cost codes and estimates where as you get moving through the system more, these are informational tabs, okay, that link to those specific transactions or information. So then you hit save. And now that new project is added here in the list. If I want to add cost codes to the project at this point in time, I can click cost codes and I can click add from catalog, and I can add all of my cost codes from my standard catalog. So notice I have 400 cost codes in my standard list. So I may or may not want to add all of these. If I only want to add some, you can certainly do that as well. Just make sure you pick the parent as well, okay? Because it needs that when it adds into this area. Okay, so let's say you want to add just a few. Click done. And now those are added to the project to be used. You are going to notice that on an accounts payable bill screen, for example, that you can add cost codes on the fly. So how I know that is in my screens. If I have an add button here, I can add cost codes on the fly if I need to. Okay, so I want to point that out. Okay, another way to get cost codes onto a project is through the estimate process. So in my estimate, I have an ability to import estimates with the WBS work breakdown structure, where it's going to bring in the cost codes on the estimate only. So if I want a control in place to where no one can code to anything but the cost codes on the job, then I'm going to use this button and bring in the estimate with the cost codes. If you want to add an estimate manually, you can hit add here as well, and you can add an estimate in the system. We highly recommend using import because you're going to see how long some of these can be. But if you have a simple estimate, you certainly can come here and add the estimate as well. So now to go through this project estimate screen. So here's one that's already added in the system. Remember how I mentioned we want the estimate ID to match the project number. So normally when you add a project, this field is going to be blank and you're going to type in this project number here. You're going to also put the status to active. You're going to then change the estimate type to current estimate. So we do not want to use original estimate. That is what the default is in the system. But you will want to use the current estimate because it allows you to track the original revisions and approved change lines separately or report them together. Okay, so if I want to see my original values, so all of these original lines make up my original estimate, I could get to that number. And then also, if I want to see my approved changes with that number, I can also report on the 800 some thousand with the 22 million or separately. So it's important to use current estimate. The estimate date is going to pull from that begin date from the project. Okay, so you can type it in here, but that's why I was mentioning those dates on the project come into play here. Okay, the first estimate you create in the system will automatically mark it as primary, but you can check mark that. The primary checkbox will make it the estimate that is used in the change order screen. Okay, so when we talk about change orders, that is what estimate is going to pull in for there. Then integrate with GL. You're going to pick post to GL budgets. You're going to pick project estimates here, and you're going to pick period of each estimate entry effective date. Okay, so the posting period goes along with these dates right here. So if I add a revision line down here for 7/31/22, then I can see my estimate as of 5/31 of 22,047,000. And then if I added another 100 grand right here, I can see at 7/31 or a million, let's just do a million. I can add at 7/31, I can see if I use this bullet, I'm going to be able to see 23 million when I run reports as of 7/31. So basically, that gives you more options when you use current estimate and when you use this period of each estimate entry effective date. You can drag and drop attachments onto here if you have backup for that estimate as well, PDF, Excel, etc. Then your change orders, as you make them in the system, they're down here for reference with green links to them. So when you're done, you can hit save. And now it brings you back to the list of estimates. Okay, notice also on your estimates, there is a duplicate button that you can use. If you have a similar one to this one, then you won't have to copy some of the information. If you want to just change some amounts, because it's very similar. So now I'm going to show you how to delete an estimate. So first you need to get the primary checkbox removed. So on one of these, I'm going to show you though what can happen. The primary box is gray. It's because I have a change request or change order. So you either need to remove these change requests or change orders, or you can create a new estimate, duplicate this one, create a new primary estimate. So the primary checkbox is gray when you have the estimates being used in a change order. So here's one that has the primary checkbox off, and I have no change requests or change orders at the bottom. So I then can delete it here. I'm not going to hit this button, but now I can delete this because the primary box is off. If I hit delete now on one of these others, it's going to tell me I still have the primary box on. Okay, so it'll give you a warning at least. So now I'm going to navigate over to projects, all cost codes, and we're going to talk about custom cost codes. So this is a list of all cost codes assigned to all projects in the system. So I'm going to hit the add button here, and we're going to add a custom cost code. So I'm going to pick a job or project, and I'm going to put a unique cost code ID here. I can't be anything here in my list that I've already used. Okay, I'm just going to give it a name here. And let's pick an item. This is going to be general all the time. Okay, you're not going to have this list like this. You're just going to put general here. Billable. And then if this is a child cost code, you're going to pick the parent here. Okay. I'm not going to use anything on production units, and cost types I'm going to assign next. So I'm going to hit the save button. And now that cost code has been added. Okay. So to find it, I can just put it in the filter here. And then now I want to add some cost types. So let's say I want to put labor. It's going to pick labor. It's going to pre-fill in, hit save. Now I want to add material. Just hit add. And notice I'm picking from the standard list right here, my standard cost type list. Okay. Probably aren't going to too often make a custom cost type. So you're going to pick probably from your list here. And that's how you add a custom cost code and assign types manually in the system. Next, I'm going to show you how to import in an estimate with standard cost codes and some custom cost codes. Okay, so now I'm going to navigate over to project estimates here. And we're going to import in an estimate through CSV that has some standard and custom cost codes on it. So there are templates in the system, and sometimes there's a link to them right here. I'm going to show you where the links are for the estimates. If they're not listed in the import screen there, you're going to come to the company import data area. And I do Control F and I type estimate and it takes me right to it. Here's the template right here. So that will bring the cost codes in to the job as well. So I am going to show a sample one that's already filled out. So I have a job number or project number here. My description, I put current estimate here. I don't have to put in the status, it's going to make it active. The estimate date, we're going to use a sample date here. And then if this is going to be the primary estimate, then I want to type true. If it's another estimate and I don't want to use it as the primary, it's like it's one that's not going to be used on the reports so much. It's just a second estimate or a second, maybe even forecast, because these are also used for forecasts. You can put false here. So it just brings in the estimate, but not mark it as primary. Then I have the estimate type name. This is important. You want this to be current estimate. And then don't forget in these templates and in the system, you want to get the capitals and the spelling just right. So it hits and uses the actual fields correctly. Okay. So if I typed a lowercase e here, it would not work. True. If I want to post it to the GL budget, project estimates here, it's always project estimates. Effective date. I've got my project ID here. And then if I want to create a new project with this template, so let's say I don't have a project in the system at all, and I'm bringing in the estimate first. You can create a new project and fill in these fields if you'd like to. You know, some of these obviously are optional, like a parent project is optional. But notice how this is all I get. I don't have all the fields that I should have when I am making a project. Okay, so we don't suggest creating a project in the estimate import here, but that is available if that's really wanted. Okay, so over here to the left, this is what it's going to look like. And then I'm going to scroll to the right some more. I've got my line numbers. So these are just going to sequence up by one. I want to type lowercase original. Okay, if this is my original estimate, I'm going to put some cost codes here. These are standard cost codes right here. This one is a custom cost code. It's a unique number. It's not on my standard list. And I want to give it this unique name. Okay. I also want to consider the parent cost code and put that here as well. Do not put the parent name if it is a standard parent cost code. Okay, do not put the name there. It will then think you're trying to make a new one and it will error out. Your cost types here. Okay, now the item that goes with the cost type is on your standard cost type list. So over here, and your standard cost type list, LAB cost type goes with the labor item. Okay, so you want to have the item filled in matching up with the cost type. Over here to the right, you want to make sure your account number here matches up with the cost type. So material, if I've matched these up, is 50300, sub is 50200, and labor is 50100. Okay, so I've done that here and matched it up with the cost type. I skipped over this, but you're going to put the amount in. You have units to measure, quantity, unit costs as well if wanted. And then my effective date, it's going to match my date up here at the beginning. Okay. And then my location, that's going to be the location that's put on the project. That's also entity, don't forget. The department, optional, but if you use departments. And then again, I'm going to put my project number again, and I'm going to put my customer that's on my project. Okay. That is what's required in the estimate import. Now, these are not required fields per Intacct, and it won't error out if you miss some of these, but this is what's required for reports to work well and for the estimate to go in so you don't have issues with reporting. Okay, so make sure you hit all of those fields for sure that I've been pointing out here. Okay, So I'm going to show how to bring this in now. And notice I've saved it as CSV. So over here in my estimate screen, I'm going to be at the entity level. So I navigated to here. I'm going to import estimate with WBS. I'm going to pick my file. And I'm going to hit import. I hit done. I'm going to refresh my screen. And notice I have my new estimate down here at the bottom. Okay, if I sort by project ID, I can see I have 2. Okay, one thing I do want to tell you that I did before I brought this estimate in. So this was in here first, this estimate right here. I cannot have both of them posting to GL budgets. Okay, so I unchecked mark this on the one that was already in the system. And then I was able to bring this one in with the post to GL budgets on and all my settings here. Okay, so just a tip there. Okay, and then when you come in here and look at it, this is what it looks like. Okay, now don't forget to hit show details so you can see the other fields down here. And don't forget, you can change the layout by dragging fields up into the columns this way. If you want to look at this and make sure you're not missing any sort of field. Okay, so that's sometimes a tip we give people is bring in these columns so you can see them. For example, like that. Okay, so that's how you import an estimate. That's how you bring in standard cost codes, but then here's my custom one that I created, and I didn't have to go through the process of coming in here and create it manually like I showed you before. Finally, we're going to talk about smart rules. Smart rules are a way to make sure that the data input on a screen is valid. So for example, on a project screen, I do not want to have the customer and the location blank. For billing purposes, you want to have these 2 in. Sage Intacct requires fields with the red star that you can see here, but they do not require these technically. Okay, so we want to write a smart rule to require that. Also, as a company, if you're using departments or if you want to make sure the project manager or project type are always on the screen, you can add those fields to the smart rule as well. 4 others we like to have is terms, billing type, and the 2 default boxes. Okay, we want to make sure those are all on a smart rule. So I'm going to start one, and we're going to show you this one that's already been created. So we've got the project owner object, because we're working on that screen. Then you're going to hit next. The error versus warning. The error will be, it will not let you through the screen, will not let you save it, will not let you save the project. The warning will give you a soft warning. If you hit save twice, you can get through it. Okay, we want a hard error. If you add set is equal to the edit button on the screens here, the edit button. So add and edit. So if my project customer ID and my project location do not equal blank, so it's exclamation mark equals double quote, and location does not equal double quote, those are blank. So to get these fields here from the field lookups, you're going to basically, this is blank, we'll start over here. You're going to do field lookup. And what are all the fields I need in this formula? I need the customer. I need the location. And don't forget to use Control F. And if I want the project manager, I can pick that as well. And type, etc. So I'm going to hit OK. and my fields come in. Now I want to write a formula after this field. So I'm just going to hit enter to move this down. Okay, so I'm going to go to the end here and I'm going to type, and I can put a space in for visual if I want to. It still figures it out. Exclamation mark equals double quote, and project location does not equal double quote. That means the customer does not equal blank and the location does not equal blank. This is a good scenario for the screen. So the condition is going to be as if the scenario was good. Okay, so we don't want the customer to be blank, not equal to blank, and we don't want the location to be blank. Also help on this page, you have a cheat sheet of the formulas and the operators that go with these. So not equal to is right here. Okay, so here's this you can also use along with a help menu that has training videos and such as well with smart rules. Okay, also don't forget to use Ask Richard to look up some smart rule information. So let's go ahead and go to the end here, and I'm just going to name this validate project info. That's what I like to name them. You hit done. Now your smart rule is in place. So we're going to go add a project. And you could also edit one as well. But if I add a project here, and if I put a location in, but skip the customer. Okay. So if I hit save here, I get the warning that says, please make sure to pick a customer and location. So if I go back and I put in a customer, now I can get through that error. Okay. So you're going to want to do that on your project screen. You're going to want to have that smart rule. Also, the estimates should have smart rules as well. So I'm going to edit one that's already here. And on the top part here, we want certain fields to be filled in a certain way. So as you watch the training and the videos, you're going to want to make sure that, for example, this is set to current estimate. The integrate with GL is working, and it's like this. And then your lines are doing this. So we will have a template estimate smart rule in your smart rules here that will get you started. So I'm going to pick project estimate. This is going to be what's going to be similar in your environment. So project estimate, that's the header. Project estimate entry is the lines, are the lines. So right here, that's this bottom part. Okay. So we're going to work on the top part here and have your project estimate header be correct. So I want it to error out when I add or edit an estimate if my estimate type does not equal current estimate and if I don't have integration buttons on. So I'm going to write this and we're going to populate this in, and we'll also have one for your entry lines as well. Okay, so let me show you here what this condition is going to be. Okay, and here's that smart rule filled out. So we have the estimate type equals current estimate. So current estimate here. The budget header, budget ID, so project estimates. And the post to is true. So this checkbox here has to be on. Okay. Now this posting period isn't one we can do right now. So you have to pick the third bullet down, the period of each estimate entry effective date. Okay. So if the smart rule does come into play, then there is a reminder here to do that. If you want a soft warning as well on top of the error to remind you that this needs to be this, you can also put a soft warning in place on top of this error message, okay? But this gets you pretty far with the header on that estimate. Okay, so now that is in place, similar to how the project smart rule works. So to conclude project setup and workflow, you are going to want to put in a few projects, one for each type of billing that you do, so that when you get to the project contracts and billing area, you do have a project set up already. Also, closer to go live, we're going to import in projects using the import functionality. So you don't have to add these one by one. If you have a short list, you certainly can use the add button and add them, but there is import capability here.